We're going now to Mr. Blaikie for a 7-minute round, please.
2 years later.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon, Minister. I wanted to pick up on the conversation we had earlier somewhat about, the injustice for the public sector with respect to Phoenix and what it means in terms of the government delivering on its obligations to public servants under collective agreements. And thank you for your frank assessment of the failure of that system to do that. Your government has chosen to carry through a decision of the Harper government to deem civilian members of the RCMP into the public service, and the deadline for that is early next year, sometime in the spring. One consequence of that, presumably, would be that those civilian members are then transferred onto the Phoenix payroll system. Currently, they're on a well-functioning payroll system, and so I wonder if, given your remarks about the inadequacy of Phoenix to make good on our obligations to public servants who are doing good work, if you could commit to not transferring those employees onto the Phoenix payroll system until the issues with the payroll system are resolved.
First of all, and Yaprak will assist on this as well. The situation with Phoenix, and we can all agree, is totally unacceptable. We're working to fix it. The frustration we have now in terms of some of the collective bargaining agreements, after having negotiated in good faith to see that the system is facing more challenges. I do believe that there's been a strengthening of the governance around Phoenix, the reportage around Phoenix, and we're making progress. But I think the question for these people who currently are getting paid well and are on a payroll system that works is why they would be transferred onto a payroll system that, by the government's own admission, is really not working, and why the transfer of their payroll wouldn't be delayed until such time as the government can provide assurances that the payroll system will work. I'm going to ask Yaprak to...
This question came to me in the last few weeks, and I asked exactly the same question. Because unless we can actually have the assurances that their pay won't be interrupted, there's no particular need in putting the employees in hardship, nor add on further pressure on the Phoenix system. So you're right. So I was asked that question, and that was my answer, and we're working through it.
Thank you. I'm very glad to hear that. I had written the minister on this issue some time ago and didn't get that clear an answer. But can I just understand from the minister then that there is a commitment not to transfer them onto Phoenix until such time as the issues with Phoenix are resolved?
We're working on that, and it would, as Yaprak said, that's what...
That's basically what my question is, and I haven't received an answer.
I'm going to take that as a yes from the minister unless he says no.
We have, there's a reason why Treasury Board Secretariat is one of the top 100 places to work in Canada.
Right on.
It's because of Yaprak.
I'm going to call that a commitment not to transfer civilian members over to Phoenix, unless you object.
I can tell you that if
I'm not hearing an objection.
We don't want to add to the burden of Phoenix right now at a time when we're still working through the problems, and it makes sense. It makes sense. So I would agree with your assessment.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Blaikie, I'm sorry, your time has been ceded to you by Mr. McCauley. I understand you have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, and thanks to Mr. McCauley. Well, I wanted to come back to the issue of some issues related to the RCMP, and thank you again for your commitment not to transfer civilian members of the RCMP onto Phoenix before the system has been fixed. In the estimates, and we touched on this briefly, there is money, just under $400,000 to the Administrative Tribunal Support Service of Canada to support the implementation of a new labour relations regime within the RCMP. And of course, that funding is for what we could call back-end issues, or it's funding for when things go wrong and they need to be resolved between management and labour. I wonder if you could comment on the efficiency of, I don't see money allocated to help train RCMP management on how to successfully implement a new labor relations regime in terms of learning how to deal with the union in the workplace and trying to have good labor relations. And I wonder if some of the money that's allocated here for the back end problems perhaps wouldn't need to be spent if RCMP management had training from outside their organization with how to do labor relations right. This is an evaluative judgment. I don't particularly expect you to endorse, but I mean, my experience through the process on C7 and seeing the attitude of RCMP management in terms of how they treated RCMP members trying to organize was that this is not a management that understands what it means to have a union in the workplace, and they're not really ready to work constructively with a union. Seems to me that some upfront investment in training would be appropriate, and hopefully means that we see less line items and estimates related to resolving disputes. And I wonder if you could comment on the lack of money for that upfront bit.
Well, C7 was groundbreaking in that it did provide for the first time an opportunity for the RCMP to unionize, and of course we want, whether it's in the RCMP or any department or agency of the Government of Canada, we want to see respectful, progressive labor relations. C7, as I said, is a significant step forward, and we would, and it will definitely it will definitely have an impact as you're now building into a regime, a labor management regime, wherein there will be union representation. I believe that in the last 2 years we've made progress writ large in terms of our relations with the public sector unions as a government. And
seeing these estimates is planning for when things go wrong. I guess I'm asking, when can we expect to see an estimate planning for how to make things go right so that you don't need money on the back end?
I'm going to ask YAPRAC to intervene, but one thing, C7 is quite recent, so there's going to be a lot of changes in the coming months and even years as this shift occurs. And YAPRAC may have some thoughts on this.
You're totally right. It's better to invest in good labor relations before you end up in a dispute. We will provide our CMP with support from Treasury Board Secretariat because we have a good labor relations group, and we're the ones that actually negotiate all of the major agreements. And so we will be supporting our CMP. It's a culture change. It is a systems change. They're going to have to go through that, but it's not asking for new money. They have human resource capacity. It's just that how do they use that human resource capacity so that they can actually deal with a unionized workforce, and we're going to help them.
So in spite of no dedicated resources or new resources, there are efforts being undertaken.
We usually like to see, people retool themselves.
Yeah.
Money.
Fair enough.